Today's a public holiday, and I totally forgot. So I accidentally had a work meeting on a holiday. As an American living in South Africa, there's a lot of holidays that I'm pretty ignorant of. So like today is the 21st of March, it's Human Rights Day, which is kind of a vapid enough name that it doesn't conjure any particular story or image in your head necessarily. So I looked into it.
One of the first things I learned is that a lot of South Africans are ignorant of what this holiday is about too. So what is Human Rights Day besides a day off work? You're about to find out. I'm Will, you're watching Thinking Linguistically. So what's the deal with Human Rights Day?
It commemorates the massacre at Sharpeville. Sharpeville is a place in what now the province of Gauteng, basically south side of Joburg in the Vaal Triangle area.
The Vaal Triangle is a triangular area formed by Vereeniging, Vanderbijlpark, and Sasolburg about 60 kilometers south of Johannesburg, South Africa.
Let's try that again. Those places are pronounced Vereeniging, Vanderbijlpark, and Sasolburg. Sasolburg is named after Sasol, the state-owned petroleum company, basically a planned community for the refinery workforce. For the Americans in the audience, I would say it's like South Africa's New Jersey. So Sasolburg would be like your Elizabeth, and then you've got a Newark and a Trenton too. This was a trend in the apartheid era of building sort of communities to provide a workforce where one was needed / wanted / tolerated. Sasolburg was built in the 50s. Sharpeville's a bit earlier. So essentially it's a rural ghetto. Like people were rounded up elsewhere and forced to move to Sharpeville. Were there places for them to live there and things for them to do? Not necessarily. So not so much of like an American-style company town as much as like an internment camp. The forced removal of people from their homes in Topville to Sharpeville sort of ramped up in 1958, 2 years before this. So by the time 1960 rolls around, we're in this period of long building tensions. Let's jump to March 21st, 1960.
5,000 people were organized to demonstrate as a protest against apartheid. It was organized by the Pan-Africanist Congress. My cursory understanding is that the idea was for people to show up without their apartheid-era passes.
A little more context. Apartheid codified racial segregation. This meant that the government had to decide as a matter of law what race every single person was. So people were issued with these IDs that indicated what race they were. The pass was also the document for recording whether you were allowed permission outside of your group's designated area, for example, like to go to a white person's house to work if you were a black lady. So in the case of the Sharpeville protest, just being outside of the black designated areas without their ID was a crime that these people were committing. Wikipedia describes the passes as being similar to an internal passport, and looking at the list of examples of countries that have used those gives you a pretty good sense of, like, the connotations and, which crowd you're associating with if you do this. For the record, the US and Canada are both on this.
The idea was for people to show up without their apartheid-era passes, so without their proof that they were allowed to be there, and then just demand to be arrested, like overflow the system. Which seems like a good idea.
This is classic peaceful civil disobedience in the style of Thoreau or Gandhi. Peaceful protest, festive atmosphere, maliciously complying with the law. This is the essence of polite protest. There's not a lot of room for it to be more tolerant. No one disputes that the protesters were peacefully gathered. Were they heard? Not really.
What happened instead is the police, after a while, sort of lost patience and realized the numbers were not in their favor and started firing into the crowd. They used weapons that are from World War II, so the Lee Enfield rifle and the Sten submachine gun, and they killed 91 people and wounded 250 or so others.
We're not exactly certain about some of the numbers. It's not a situation that lends itself to accurate record keeping.
I think a lot of Americans are not super familiar with the details of what it's like to live in an authoritarian state. This is like one of the things that I've come to terms with after moving here. It's like reconciling with post-apartheid stuff.
Whoa there, Tiger. Let's walk that back. I'm not going to say that I've come to terms with the complicated legacy of apartheid, just that I'm trying. I am continually astounded at how diverse and minute and far-reaching the consequences of apartheid are, even still today, right? Sharpeville is 65 years ago. Let me tell you a story. It's probably apocryphal. I haven't been able to confirm all of the facts. It's at the very least informative. Back during apartheid, of course, there was racial segregation in South Africa, and one of the consequences of this is that children from different races were educated in different schools. So this means that, the colored kids went to the colored school, the white kids went to the white school, the black kids went to the black school. This means, of course, that they're learning different things and being taught in different ways. Now, one of the odd subtleties of this that someone told me about is that black children in the black schools would be taught to write addresses in all caps for the names. Meanwhile, students learning in Afrikaans schools, particularly the colored communities, would be taught to capitalize surnames in the European Convention, but not to capitalize first names. And then over in the English-speaking white schools, people would be taught to capitalize a first letter, and that's it. This means that the government mail censors could conceivably tell the race of the person who wrote a letter without even opening the envelope, which is surreal to think about. Now, I don't know how widespread this was. I did some cursory Googling to try to see how much truth there is to this. My results aren't very informative, but I did find what I think is objectively the dumbest capitalization convention, which is to write the name in all caps except the first letter small. Who does that? Monsters. I wasn't able to find any sources that explicitly say that this was an intentional part of the curriculum. I can at least confirm that the convention of capitalizing surnames exists. I've seen people do this. The convention of writing whole name in all caps also exists and is probably more prominent among black South Africans than South Africans of other races. That's weird. But I am a professor, so I do end up spending a lot of my time watching my students write their names. Also checking lists of signatures. I hate it. I'm not suggesting that there was some grand plan for apartheid-era education to teach students to racially code their handwriting. That seems unlikely to me. But it doesn't seem unlikely that it would be the outcome of other policies that are sort of higher priority, right? Like basic segregation and treating different groups unequally. Is it conceivable that handwriting in South Africa is racially coded? Absolutely. Almost everything in South Africa is racially coded. The fast food chains are racially coded. The grocery stores are racially coded.
It's insidious.
Anyway, this idea seems very on point for the moment that the United States is currently in. What the US is facing now is all manner of weird shit emerging in the legal political system, a lot of which is not really intentional and not really planned, and instead is just the consequence of an opportunity and an existing pressure towards a particular outcome in the system. There's some intentional, deliberate plan that is a higher order priority, and then all sorts of other things just sort of follow from what needs to be assumed in order for that to be accommodated. If you assert that X is okay, it forces the bar of okayness to move past point X. And if you continue then to normalize and rationalize X after the fact, well, that probably has the effect of sort of repulsing the edge of the category even further away. Allowing X to happen doesn't just move the bar to X, it moves it to X plus C, some constant, more than just the minimum required. I really don't know what this is going to look like in America, but the time I've spent in South Africa convinces me that there's going to be a bunch of effects that ripple out and change lots of little things about the fabric of life. We'll see, I guess, in time if that's how things play out. That's my hunch. Is America going to have its own version of the Sharpeville massacre? Probably not right away. But for anyone still in that boomer, it couldn't ever happen here kind of mentality, well, I'll leave you with the words of Nelson Mandela.
It always seems impossible until it's done.
He, of course, didn't say that. We just like to think he did. Anyway, totalitarianism is scary. Good luck, America. Also Georgia, Gaza, Ukraine, others.